Hello, everyone. I'm Megan Roloff, Director of Member Engagement and Partnerships with ACLP. Welcome back to Child Life in Action. This is our video series where we highlight some of the amazing work being done by child life specialists and share ideas and insights from our members. Today, I'm really excited to reintroduce Debbie Spencer and introduce Katie Bowlin. Debbie may be familiar to some of you that have been following these videos. She joined me a few months ago now and shared some incredible things that she'd done to help keep her interns going while they couldn't be on site at her hospital. So today I'm really excited to have Debbie back and also have her former intern Katie with us. Katie did parts of her internship virtually, so we're going to dive into that. Just to get everybody on the same page, Debbie, would you mind giving us kind of a brief overview of some of those changes you talked with me about before, some of those things you did back when this was all getting started, when interns were removed from your hospital?
Absolutely. So our interns were sent home when they had about around 200 hours, like everyone else, or most out there. And honestly, I didn't know what to do at that point. But then actually Katie was the one that said, hey, I want to keep doing something. So I'm going to keep doing my assignments. I want to stay engaged. I want to stay learning. And that kind of spurred me to think, okay, what can I be doing? And so we started meeting twice a week and doing basic just Zoom calls and talking about different assignments that they were already assigned, or I would make up new ones. I would make up a fake census, and we'd go through and prioritize and try to get some kind of clinical aspect into that. Fast forward a few weeks, I learned that a department in our hospital had been approved to use Microsoft Teams to do their internship. And so I looked into that opportunity so that we could screen share in a safe way our electronic medical chart. And so then we started using real census and real charts and really getting a little bit closer to real clinical work. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. When a couple weeks later, we had been working on getting telepresence robots, and this is one of them behind me here. And they actually appeared in my office one day, and they were ready to be used. And I thought, well, if we can use Microsoft Teams, and that's okay for her to use from home, and we had already sort of talked about maybe using an iPad or something to get into the room with Microsoft Teams. And so could we use the robot? And so we just started talking about it. And I went to my manager and I said, what would this look like? Would this be okay? And we were kind of piloting it and trying to figure out connection issues for the hospital. And we weren't quite ready to use it with patients just yet. We hadn't had our big marketing launch and everything, but I said, I could test this out a little bit. And we went to the AIT department and they had no issues. They helped us get it set up. And so Katie worked through the technical aspect of being at home and trying to get into it and have the right computer and which would work better. An iPad, a computer, a phone, how does that all work? And then I had to get past my insecurities around technology and really kind of say, this isn't about me. This is about, just like we're with patients, it's not about me. This was an opportunity for a student. And so we started taking it into rooms, and it was a really great experience. I do want to add, and Katie would never say this about herself, but she was a very advanced intern, and she had demonstrated a lot of competence early on in her internship. And we had already sort of basically checked off a lot of the basic competencies, because there are some things you just can't do virtually. And since she had already done that when she was here, this was just an opportunity for her to continue getting patient contact hours and to do the assessment and the preps and things like that she could do virtually. So I just wanted a little caveat. It's not meant for an entire internship, I would say, but because she had completed so much already, it was really kind of just a win for her to be able to just finish out her hours this way. That was a long answer to your question.
No, but I really appreciate you putting that caveat out there. That's a great reminder that while there's opportunity with these things, there is also still just some core pieces that need to be in the hospital physically, at least at this stage. Who knows where all this technology is going to go, but at this stage. So I appreciate that, that reminder for everyone. So now that you've both done this, you've completed this internship virtually, I'm just curious to hear a little bit more of your perspectives on how it went. What worked, what was challenging, where some of the, kind of growing pains or hiccups were along the way.
Yeah, I guess I can start. I think it threw me back into, as the internship supervisor, a lot of times I'm kind of hands off with the students. I meet with them weekly and I'm kind of on the periphery. But due to COVID and just staffing and all of that, I was really just put back right daily contact with Katie. We spent 5 to 6 hours a day, either through the robot or talking through the computer. And so it put me right back into her direct learning, which was exciting and kept me growing, but was different than our traditional setup where she would have been with other supervisors and in different units. So I just kind of took it back into my reins, if you will. And like I mentioned, I'm kind of an old school. I was raised on I-Spy books and light up spinners. So technology is my teeth. So even iPads and things like that are always intimidating. I'm finally coming to time. But the idea of walking around with a robot was very intimidating to me. And like, what are people going to think? And how is families going to receive this? Is this going to be just, is it going to feel cheesy? Is this, is it going to be authentic? And I just had to do it to get past it. And I can honestly say it was like having Katie literally right next to me. And she could move the robot, and so it was like she was walking into the rooms with me. And once we kind of felt it out, it really was very, I would almost say, identical in those sense, as to what the experience that I was able to provide a student, to what I was familiar with. And I think just some of the little glitches that we had with connection, things like that made it challenging. So on top of having to open doors for a robot, you also have to be there in case it cuts out. So I could fill in for the conversation if it totally shut off and things like that. So little things like that were easy workarounds, but no family ever said no to the robot. It was well received. We did kind of select in the beginning patients to go in and see, and some of them were patients Katie already knew from her previous rotations, just to kind of test the waters. Sure. And we'd go in and say, okay, pretend that you've never met her before, and she's going to do an assessment and kind of practice if you would participate in that. And then we just started going through, and we'd find patients that had procedures, and she'd get to prep them for procedures and all of those things. So I think once we got past those first jitters and some major connection issues, it really went well. So I don't know if you have anything else to add, Katie.
Before we do, I just wanted to follow up on one thing. You mentioned that, with this transition, you kind of jumped into more of a direct supervisor role rather than being kind of a step removed as the coordinator you normally would be. Was there interest or willingness amongst your normal supervisors to engage in this, or were things just kind of so, I imagine a lot of things were changing daily that maybe it would have been the one thing too many for them? I'm just curious how that happened.
Now that I think back on it, I don't think I ever threw it out to the team. I just kind of took it and ran with it because I had the time and availability. Okay. So many of us were taking on, or not, we were all taking on different responsibilities, different schedules in the beginning too. We extended hours and kind of moved people around to make it make sense. We've been so blessed to not be furloughed or have our hours cut. We've been able to make it work and just work in different areas. So it was kind of selfishly was a way for me to explore this and learn from it, but also I don't think I offered it necessarily because I don't want to put something else on the team when there was so much out there. Now, if we were to do this again, I know that there would be people that would be very comfortable, just like having a student with them instead of a robot.
Sure. Now, Katie, same initial question to you. Now that you've done this, I'm curious from the student perspective, what worked, what was challenging?
I think for me, well, initially getting the phone call that students weren't able to return was absolutely devastating, especially, as everybody knows, the journey to get to internship can be a very long one. So for me, I was really heartbroken, but I also understood and I wanted to fight for my education and my learning and my experiences. And I knew Debbie would 100% back me up and help me as well. So with that, we, like Debbie was kind of saying, we kind of started just role playing, and that's kind of already out of your comfort zone when my internship supervisor is acting like a 5-year-old and I'm prepping a 5-year-old. But then when it transitioned into the robot, it brought a whole new presence. Initially, we would use an iPad to go talk to patients, and it was hard because these children weren't able to go out of their rooms because they weren't able to go to the playrooms and all the regulations of COVID. So for them, it was like technology burnout. They had already been on the iPad for hours a day. They had already been watching TV, and so you could tell the disengagement, which is completely understandable. So when we had the robot, I kid you not, these families and these patients treated me as if I was a person. Obviously, they knew I was a robot, but it was almost as if the robot, since it's taller, it has a body, if you will. It made that experience so different, and being able to do full on preps, full on assessments, and full on playing was really remarkable and really fun. I remember the first time, I was able to do that. Me and Debbie were like, wow, like that felt real. Like it felt like it was true child life. It was amazing. But with that, of course, came some frustrations as far as my connection at home was really hard because I'm controlling the robot. I am moving it forwards and backwards and doing all those things through my laptop. And so I had an older laptop. And so I'm trying to figure out, okay, what can I do? Like, can I use my brother's laptop? Can I change this? Can I do this? And so when we got that figured out and the robot wasn't stalling in the middle of the hallway, made things much easier and connection was great. And being able, when you assess body language, you assess the tone of voice, you assess the actual words. And I was able to see and work with that as a regular in-person student would do. So it was truly a remarkable experience, but it's definitely one that definitely allows you to get out of your comfort zone for sure.
So you and Debbie have both mentioned that you were able to control and move the robot. Just for the benefit of anybody that maybe isn't familiar with these robots, or their hospitals don't have them, whatever the case may be. Can you explain a little bit more about how that worked from your perspective? Is it like kind of being in a video game? I'm just kidding.
Yes, that's actually so funny. So when they had me first go on the robot, I didn't know that the robot would then be used to go into rooms. I think it just happened. So they had me, go through, sign in. I got on the robot, and I felt almost as if I was at Disney on like the Soarin' ride, where you're like kind of controlling it, but you're like, whoa, what's going on? It really felt almost like a video game. And we even the patients who weren't able to come out of their room, there was multiple robots in the hospital. So we would do robot races. So like down the hallways. So that was really fun to do, but it was definitely weird at first. But then I realized like, okay, I had to make sure I don't run into a doorway when I go into a patient's room, because it has to be, professional, but also fun and engaging.
Yeah, I can imagine like depth perception being a little different, or just not knowing like what your footprint is.
Fortunately, with the robot, it's like a full 180 view, and then there's a camera on the bottom so I can see below. So I can tell if somebody is walking behind me. So I know if I need to move over or if I need to stop. So that was really nice. So I never ran into anybody. That's wonderful. Door frames, though.
And if for those who aren't familiar with telepresence robots, the whole idea, the reason we got them in the first place was to allow patients to operate it from an iPad and then take the robot around the hospital or come to an activity, or for those that are on isolation or have compromised immune systems. It's a way for them to get out of their room virtually. And we bought 4 of them, and like I said, they just happened to come available during this very crucial time of when no one can come out of their room, and they're we're looking for ways to engage patients in fun activities. And so we just kind of took it and tweaked it a little bit and said, well, what else can we use these robots for? So I know that there are hospitals out there that have them or are maybe looking at getting them. And here's another reason to put it on your wish list to help students too.
So I'm curious, obviously with using them with an intern, you do want, someone else in the room supervising, but there's been so much conversation the last few months about telehealth and providing child life services from a distance. Are the robots, is the connection good enough? Is it independent enough that in concept a specialist from home could do interventions with patients without someone physically there, or does it still need?
You still need a handler to be able to open the doors and basically be your hands. But once you're in the room, Katie was in the rooms independently at times for play purposes and, playing Uno and whatnot with patients. So once you're in the room, it's just like being a person in the room. You just can't pick anything up.
Well, thank you for educating me more about that. I've heard about them over the last couple of years and found it interesting, but I've never had the chance to, see that in person. So I appreciate learning more about it from you guys.
Yeah.
So Katie, now that you're through your internship, how would you say your virtual experience compared to your in-person experience?
I would say that they were absolutely worlds apart, but also incredibly similar, if not the same. So I would say initially, in person, you get exactly what you're there for. You get watching the supervisors, you get practicing it on your own. You get that very independent, I'm on my own. You're carrying the phone, you're going in rooms by yourself. It's very independent. Whereas virtual, you do have to have somebody with you, as the reasons that Debbie just stated. But it's also nice because when you are doing virtual, it is nice to have somebody nudge or help you if the connection, has an issue, or if you are like, oh my goodness, wait a minute, because it is different. I mean, for me, at some points, I had to remember, okay, I'm at home, but I'm at the hospital. I need to be a professional, I need to dress like a professional. The background has to be professional. So that I had to, kind of work through all of those types of things. So it's very different than, I come dressed professionally, I'm good to go. But at home, it's not the same. And, locking my door, telling family, you need to not be at this end of the house for HIPAA purposes, and making sure it was very safe for anybody that I was communicating with. But initially, when we began doing the census over the computer and then doing role playing, it felt very different. But it was also kind of nice because if I can do it in front of my supervisor, I can do it with the patient. And Debbie threw curveballs in role plays too. It wasn't just very simple role plays. She threw curveballs. So it made me very confident, especially going into the robot when I was able to transition to really seeing patients again. Because of this kind of baby step process, it really didn't feel as nerve-wracking to be on the robot because I felt like I had prepared for this. I was ready. I was excited and hungry to be with patients again. But it certainly wasn't fun at first in regards to connection. But once we figured that out, it was clear as day. We didn't have issues for weeks. It was almost perfect. And we were able to go on, an inpatient unit. We went to oncology. We went to the PICU. And I believe there was one more, but I don't remember which other one. But we went to multiple different units. And, with that, you assess differently, you introduce differently. And so I was able to practice all of that through the robot and then, addressing misconceptions. So it felt so similar and so much of the same skills and techniques that I was using in person, but on the robot. But again, addressing those differences of I'm at home, I have to make sure that I'm remaining professional.
No, I really appreciate you bringing up that aspect of kind of controlling your home environment a little bit. And those are some great considerations you mentioned about your background or, how close your family is when you're talking about things that are HIPAA sensitive. A lot of the world has, in certain industries have been able to work from home. And there have been those videos like, people doing interviews for the news and suddenly kids are running through the background or whatever. I think we've all seen some of that at this point, or people that have been watching these videos. My dog likes to make appearances now and again in the chair behind me, but it's a totally different level of control you need when you're kind of accessing a hospital virtually. So I really appreciate you sharing those considerations and things you had to figure out.
Yeah, I was able to watch a webinar, I believe it was through ACLP, about how to virtually do child life. And she hit, a lot of those points. So I was able to get information from that. So that was really great also, because I was like, oh yeah, my background really does have to be blank.
Yeah.
But,
well, shout out to Kia for the Telechild Life webinar. Thank you, Kia. So Debbie, you've talked about this a little bit already, but as a supervisor, what are some of the changes you had to make in terms of how you supervise, how you give feedback, kind of in a setting where neither of you really knows how this is going to go necessarily?
I think what started us off in a really great place was the relationship that Katie and I had already formed. And as she mentioned, it was baby steps. We didn't just bite off more than we could chew. We really said, okay, let's get good at this. And then let's do this, kind of like scaffolding, honestly. And as we built our confidence, then we got a little bit more brave each day. And so the fact that we were able to communicate openly and honestly and give each other grace through this process was incredibly important. There were days when things just weren't quite going well, and we both just had to laugh through it, or, just like I said, give each other grace. As far as from a supervisor's role, I really had to think of it. There was definitely more footwork on my part than when a student's here. You can't just say, okay, why don't you go to the playroom and grab the activities that you would provide to this patient. It's me physically going, and I would, the robot would come in with me and be like, okay, now what would you choose and how? But I'm the one carrying it. She doesn't have any hands, like we've mentioned. So, and sometimes it was just faster for me to be able to go and do it myself, rather than, because the robot can only go so fast, and we're trying to see patients and just the demands of the day. It would be quicker if I'd be like, okay, you just stay here. I'll be right back. I'm going to go grab some paint and I'll come back. So she misses out on those little, or the intern would miss out on those little stressors of the tiny demands that take up our day. The phone calls that come in when we're in the middle of an intervention, or we're walking, she can see 180 degrees, but she may not be able to see all the way down the hallway where there's a stretcher now coming, and we're, okay, where's that patient going? So there's a lot of the environmental information that we're constantly gathering, our job that is limited through a robot. And there are some drawbacks as far as sound. If too many people are talking or there's too much background noise, she couldn't hear really anything, or it would cut out. So we did have to kind of take that into consideration as well. And then I'm trying to think what else. I knew that she was proficient in being able to provide procedural support, but that's something that's really difficult to do through a robot. And because the things we're looking at as a supervisor are the placement and the things you're choosing. And yeah, you could hold up a light up spinner on, this blowing bubbles through a screen, really, it loses its effect.
Yeah.
So that would be something that would be, I would be challenged to be able to say as an intern demonstrated competence in that skill virtually. So that's one of the aspects that I would say is a missing link or a drawback through the virtual component. But, preparation, all of that. She, Katie, like I said, she was an advanced student. She was a go-getter anyway. She had, an IV catheter at home, and she had different things. So she was able to show patients those sort of things with the stuff she had at home already. So those actual preps and things did go very well because of just her preparation. So I think that was, it definitely caused me to be extremely engaged, and kind of, you can't really put the intern in the total driver's seat like you normally would at the end of an internship and say, I'm just here for support. You make all the calls, because they're missing valuable pieces of information that you just can't get when they're at home and you're in the environment.
Sure.
They heard the door open, but they didn't realize it was the doctor walking in. And so, I might have to say, okay, oh, hi, the doctor's here. We're just going to, we'll just roll over here to the side and let them come in and do their assessment. So there's just a little bit more of that driver's seat that the supervisor has to take, I would say, kind of a major difference I noticed.
Okay, that's good to know, especially, kind of going into this next question. If the situation required it, would you do an internship or part of an internship this way again?
Absolutely. I really see a great opportunity for practicums. I can't think of much that you couldn't do in a practicum virtually, if that makes sense. So as far as the way our practicum is designed, it's a lot of observation. It's in the rooms and it's really pulling back the curtain of what is child life. But the students doing pretty much observation, maybe some play and maybe introductions, but you can do all that through a robot, through an iPad. Even if you don't have like the robot is kind of that high level, but you can do it all through an iPad too. And I really think there's an opportunity for practicums that way, because it's, traditionally practicum students may not be at the hospital all day long. So you can even carve out 2 or 3 hours a day that you're dedicated to your student that way. And I think it could really open up some major opportunities for students who can't relocate for practicums, to be able to be across, different states and completing a virtual practicum, but a very clinical virtual practicum. Katie, and the other thing that Katie did a lot was we've had to move all of our activity times to virtual. So we do it through Zoom. So Katie was facilitating those. And so she was able to do that from her house, whether it's bingo or Jeopardy or all the different Zoominary, different things that she was able to do. So that's definitely something that practicum students can do as well, where they can be playing and leading group activities virtually as well.
Yeah. Katie, same question to you. Knowing what you know now, if we were to find ourselves in this situation again, would you do an internship this way or be part of an internship this way?
I think I absolutely would, because if this did ever happen again, I have the skills as a professional now to be able to do virtual child life, whether as a working professional or helping another student. And I know that I would be fully equipped to be able to help a student and teach others on how to help students. Again, I don't think that it would be appropriate for a full internship, just because there's so many little things, such as getting a report from nurses, talking with doctors, talking about plan of care. Those types of things are really hard to time out with a robot. But I think it's, whether it's the beginning or the end of internship, I guess the middle too, but I think that in the beginning you could really work on, let's try this, let's talk about how you would prep and do assessments, whereas the end you would learn in how to do those full-on assessments and those full-on preps. But I think it is such a great skill to learn and to have. And while it would have been amazing to finish my internship in person, I see how many opportunities and what skill sets I've learned, and how they always say, like, you have to do things for kids to get out of your comfort zone, like be creative and be fun. I learned so much of how to be creative and how to be fun and not so stagnant. But this is how I saw it done. It doesn't matter. You can be as creative as you possibly can. And I think I really learned that through the robot. Like, how do I prep a kid not in person? Here, let me show you the IV on a little teddy bear in my room. Like, we'll figure this out together. But I think it is possible. And again, I agree with Debbie on the practicum perspective as well. I think that could absolutely be done for even a full practicum.
So, at this point, we don't know what the next couple months are going to bring. A lot of places interns are back. That's great. But we don't know. We don't know. So I'm just curious if, for both of you, if you had advice for other supervisor intern pairs that may need to try something like this in the future. Just any advice you would have. Maybe Katie, we'll start with you from the intern perspective.
So I would say to go for it. You're going to be scared. You're going to be uncomfortable. It's going to feel weird. It might even feel like a little bit of a loss as well. But when you jump into do it and you get out of that comfort zone and you see that smiling patient, it'll be completely worth it. And you also have to be able to trust your supervisor and trust that they know what's best for you and they know what advice to give you and what support they offer. So that if you say something that was a little bit off, or if you say something that could have been said differently, and they can help you and say, maybe next time say this or try this, or let's practice this one-on-one. It makes the experience so much better knowing they believe in you, they are confident in you, they chose you as a student for a reason. So just jumping into it and not being afraid to mess up, because you do have the skills, you know what to do. It feels weird in a different setting and environment, but go for it.
And I would say to the professionals out there, just like I said in my first interview, think about what can I do? You may not be able to do all of it, but can you engage your students in some form of learning? Can you mimic the clinical world in some way? Can you use iPads? Can you get them in the room somehow? I think we have a responsibility as professionals to think outside the box for our students just as much as we do for our patients, because they're going to keep this field going. And so if we're really going to grow as professionals, we need to think about what can I do and how can I help keep this moving forward. And maybe it's a combination of hospitals. Maybe it's, you and another hospital tagging together and saying, okay, I can't take it all on. I can't do all of this. But if it's virtual, why couldn't it be between, a partner hospital or something? So I think there's so many opportunities. And I think just starting the conversation, talking about it, saying, I wonder what else can we be doing is a great place to start.
Fantastic. Thank you both. I don't want to take up any more of your time. You've been so generous with it. But I just really appreciate you both being available for this conversation. I have a feeling a lot of folks are going to be interested in this conversation. And I'm excited to see what happens next for both of you. And Katie, good luck on your upcoming certification exam.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. And on that note, thank you again. And we'll see you all for the next Child Life in Action.